Hello, assalamu alaikum everyone. Aviation Cadet Saber Shah from my channel, Aviation Cadet 9936. So this is my video 2 and it's about the Air India Flight 171. Why is it about the Air India Flight 171? Because when this accident happened, this crash, unfortunate crash happened on 12th June 2025, I did make a series of videos on that, about 10 videos. Because the commentators on this flight, the famous ones, they are from Western world. And honestly, they have no idea how the flying is being done in this part of the world, in India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, the South Asian part of the world. So they are wearing the Western civilized world, they call themselves civilized, glasses, and viewing the uncivilized world, they call it the accidents here. So this cannot be done. This shouldn't be judged in this way. I would give you a solid reason for that. This whole aviation, modern aviation world, like the Boeings, the Airbuses, and the DC-10s and stuff like that, all these aircraft manufacturers, they're from the Western world. And here in this part of the world, people have been using them. The aviation world has been using all these aircrafts. But if you look at the history of the aviational blunders, aviational incidents, the crashes, most of them have happened in that part of the world, which is the manufacturer of these things. Now you would say, oh, because that world is more in number. That's why. No, sir. The half of the world lies in this part of the world. 1.5 billion people in India, around a similar amount in China, and around 500 million people in Bangladesh and Pakistan alone. So if you include all this, half of the aviation world lies here. Half of the the world population lies here. So the ratio should be equal, but it's not. Reason being, uh, initially, the pilots in the Western world, um, I don't know their training system much, how they are given solos and how they're given their uh, pilot licenses, but I know in this part of the world how the licenses are awarded to the pilots in this part of the world. So most of the accidents, crashes, the devastating crashes has happened in the civilized world, not in this part of the world. Very few. So like Flight 171 is one of the examples, PK 8303 of Pakistan Airlines in 2020, Air Blue 202 or the Eastern China Airlines, MU 5305, something like that. So you can count these incidents on fingers. But on the other hand, once you see the crashes and in the Western world, so all these autopilots, all these MCAS, these systems, these computerized systems, were actually made for these dumb and silly pilots, I would say, because they don't know how to fly humanly. Recently, I saw a video of one of the people I actually do not consider as aviation experts. I call them aviational illiterates. And he was talking about Flight 171 again. Of course, that's Mr. Captain Steeve, the pilot on the couch. As you've seen the thumbnail, I would prove, mentioning a few cases, that the Western pilots are dumber, just like Captain Steeve, and that's why they had to make computers much smarter than the people, so that even monkeys can fly. And Captain Steeve is an example of that one. He came up with an idea, a person claiming that he has a 40 year of experience in flying different kinds of Boeings. And he was the one who actually said, that the pilots, instead of raising the gears up, raised the flaps up. So the Boeing 737 crashed. It blows my mind out that how can someone be that stupid to even come up with that idea? This whole computer system, all these computers installed on the aircrafts, the autopilots, the auto reverse, the auto thrust, the auto landing, it was only because of people like Captain Steeve, who have been in this airline industry and being the dumbest pilots in the world. It makes me start to think that this person, who has actually gained his fame because of the Indian airliner accident flight 171, we're almost all together on the ground in the air. There were about 260 plus people who gave their lives. He cast that tragedy. He was nothing before this tragedy. I mean, his channel was not famous, and he was just a simple who, and then he became Captain Steeve, and who comes and has the audacity to talk about the pilot error. And I could totally understand why is he doing that. He himself was in a tragic incident, which, because he's so lazy, and that proves my point too, that these people are just, these Western pilots, most of them are lazy. Because of being lazy, he evaded 911 incident. He assigned himself for that flight, the United Air Flight 11. He put his name as the first officer on that one and waited for them to give him a phone call. He could have phone called them, and then instead of that poor guy on his birthday, Tom McGinnis, I think, he went instead of Captain Steeve, and his life went in vain. That was a terrorist attack, heinous attack, and totally condemnable. And this made this person survived. And I saw his video. The first video he sent on his channel was that with 3.5 million hits, because the video was touchy and he gave a bit of Christianity touch in it, religious touch. In the end, he says, okay, not one person died, two people died. One was the Tom McGinnis, and the second one was Jesus. So because of that religious touch, he got this 3.5 million. But after that, if you see his videos, 100, like my videos at the moment, 20 views, 40 views, 90 views. I'm not laughing, but I mean, I am laughing actually. He had no subscribers, not many views, but then he started catching the tragedy of Flight 171 and came up with this stupidity that they forgot to raise the gears up. And guess what? He got about 3 million hits, and he got like 200 plus subscribers for that. And 2 days later, once he saw the wind, he saw that people are talking about the rat being deployed, and right away came back without even saying sorry about what he has said before, earlier, what he has said. And he jumps up onto a new wagon and starts saying, oh, no. It was the rat deployed. That means that dual engine failure happened on Boeing 737, which is close, 737, 737, whatever it was, which is the Boeing, it has never happened in the history of this particular aircraft that dual engine failure has ever happened. And he comes up with that theory. And his video gets 12 million hits with almost 500,000 new subscribers. And if you see his top videos, top 10 videos are on Flight 171. And that's where he gained his fame now. And now he's being the expert. But because of these idiots, all these new machines were enrolled into the airliners. I mean, we have heard about that flight. I forgot the number. I think Flight 401. The Flight 401 that crashed because these 3 pilots plus 1 observer in the cockpit, 4 people present in the grown up. I mean, like one was 55 years of age. And they were discussing a fused light bulb in the cockpit for about 8 minutes. And during these 8 minutes, one of them did a huge F up. And the autopilot, which is made for them. And as I said, that Lawrence Sperry was the first man who made this autopilot in 1912. 1912, when it was the airline industry was just 10 years old, and the flight time, the flight duration was 10 minutes, 20 minutes at max. Well, there were a few records broken in the year 1912 before, after the autopilot was invented, and these pilots couldn't even take 10 minutes of flying, the only job they have to do, and yet they couldn't do it, and they had to invent autopilot. In Top Gun, he says it's the pilot, not the machine. But I'm telling you, by seeing these Captain Steeve's kinds, it's the machine that has to be smarter than these dumbass monkeys, because these people can't fly at their own. Flight 585, Flight 587, the rudder. Man, when I heard that report, again, it's a terrible incident, and it could have been evaded within those 10 to 15 seconds they had at the time of landing. They could have saved all those lives at the back of their cockpit. But men are dumber. They are the dumb people. They couldn't. If you're putting your control inputs on one rudder and the aircraft is rolling towards the opposite side and it keeps rolling, then what do? You stop doing that. You neutralize the rudders and see the behavior of the aircraft. Even within 10 seconds, you have an ample lot of time to do that. But no, not only one, the second, and even the third one. There were 3 incidents of same kind. Flight 585, Flight 587, and there was another one, I forgot the number of that one, but they survived because this rudder jamming, it unjammed itself, so they landed at high speed. And then the investigators, after 9 years, found out the problem, which could have simply been evaded by giving the opposite side of rudder. If the rudder is reversed, this is what you do, But these are kinds of Mr. Captain Steeves. These kind of dumb people can only fly with the computers. I mean, how hard it is for 4 people sitting in a cockpit. You assign one person to fix the light, to check whether it's fused or not. But one person is writing the observations. The second one, they actually send that the first engineer into they call it the hellhole, where you could visually see if the gears are down or not. And 2 of the evil genius minds are looking at that light, and this autopilot got disengaged from the altitude, and they went down slowly, steadily into the dungeons, into the swamps of Florida, I think, and a lot of people died. I mean, this all automation, all these computers are actually made for these Western pilots. These pilots from the United States of America, mostly, and the other European countries. Because these kind of pilots, they cannot recover out of any emergency. And for them, machine has to be there. And even then, even the machine is fighting with them to save themselves from themselves. These machines are invented actually to save these pilots from their own blunders. Yeah, Western pilots are dumber. That's why they have invented all these systems to protect them. And now the computer has to be smarter than these dumbers, because they would still F it up on any given day. So what happens when this kind of technology, where the Eastern world, India, Pakistan, we are trained for dealing the emergencies manually. Okay, but in this part of the world, most of the times it is the human factor is involved. Then you fly mostly, try to fly manually, and a good combination of human to machine keeps that thing in mind, that less accidents happen. Now, the maintenance issue here in this part of the world is huge, People are lazy, people are reluctant, people try to find out the ways not to do the things properly on time. Because as we see, a switch in time saves 9, by the way, it's not a stitch in time saves 9. It was the switch in time saves 9. Switch was a judge back in times when this term was coined first. But now civilized world has evolved, and they know from their mistakes what kind of blunders they made, that okay, computers can take in, and they rely on computers mostly, or instrument flying mostly. But as I've given my life experience in my videos earlier, and I've told you that at least in Pakistan and India, pilots, they have to go better than the machines, because the machine's reliability, the same machine which is working in the US or Canada or Europe, the same machine working here is going to be different, because the maintenance would not be up to the level. So keeping that thing in mind, keeping these glasses of this country in mind, these countries in mind, you have to judge an incident happened in India or Pakistan, and then you can go up with that. Now, any report coming out of NTSB of the US or the French authorities for the Airbus, or American authorities for the Boeing, and those crashes and incidents have happened in Europe or in the US, makes sense, okay? Because the system, the bureaucracy is not that advanced or that powerful, not advanced, I mean that powerful, that can influence anything related to the politics of the country. But in this side of the world, nope, this doesn't work like that. Here, there are many things where politicians, establishments, and of course the bureaucracy, they want to earn cash out of the things. And again, just like I said, that most of the accidents happen in the Western world. Well, most of the corruption happens in this part of the world too. So this is obvious too. So wherever I am honest, I am honest. You know, I had to say all these things, that take off your Western standards glasses off, and then wear the South Asian glasses, and now see the incident. And you will come up to what I have said on June 20th, although in my first two videos on June 12th and 14th, indirectly I've mentioned, but I was really sad by the loss of the Aviational brothers. Although they're from India, doesn't matter, and aviation world doesn't have any nationality. So I gave my condolences, and I know what a pilot could go through during those times, because I have been under those conditions, under those circumstances a few times, and which I have mentioned in my previous videos. So the response time they had for an untrained for emergency procedures pilot, it was 10 seconds. And even if it were a professional Indian or Pakistani fighter pilot, 10 seconds would be close to very difficult to recover from that situation. But these pilots, keep in mind, they do not have the practices like the way our fighter pilots do. As I said earlier too, that every mission we fly is an emergency solving mission. And we always land by one of the simulated emergencies in real time: engine failures like RT failure, landing gear failure, nose brake failure, the wheels are not coming out failure, blah, blah, blah. A lot of emergencies we create for ourselves, and then we do it practically in the air, not on a simulator. These kids, I would call them kids, the commercial pilots, they do it in a simulator, and a simulator is like a video game. It's not even close to the reality. So, and you have many chances to, be reborn, but a fighter pilot doesn't have those chances. I don't want to get into the debate of who's better, a fighter pilot or a commercial airline pilot, but what I'm saying is they're not exposed to, no matter what country it is, to the real emergencies like this, what has happened here. So the response time for them was less than 10 seconds. And whatever they could do, they tried to do, but the aircraft did not respond to their actions care to, recover from that situation. Now, I saw a video of Mr. Captain Steeve with another, one of my favorite YouTuber. And Mr. Captain Steeve, I don't like the guy because he has changed his point of view. So, and he's a commercial airline pilot, so I can understand. He has never been into that kind of situation. He can never be into that kind of situation ever in his life, not even in a simulator. I even hardly doubt that he has touched any passenger aircraft as a captain. But anyhow, if he can wear a fake uniform, he can fake anything. That's why my background today is gonna be Captain Steeve's from now on. Wait, let me remove this thing, because after this, the background is gonna be changed. There we go. So see, it's not easy. By the way, I have ordered my fake pilot uniform as well, because when I will talk about the passenger aircrafts, to give a professional look to the audience out of Pakistan. I also want to do what Captain Steeve does, fake puppet. It's not very difficult for anyone to pose as Captain Steeve, as an expert. You don't have to fly any of the Boeings or Airbuses, nothing. All you need to do is have a good microphone, a good camera, and ChatGPT for the script they write. And because they're going to write the script on the basis of whatever information they can get from online, which is famous. Infamous, and then you just need to speak it in with a uniform, and you become like an expert. Unlike Blanco Lario, I highly respect him, and mentor pilot. These two are the ones I always consult with whenever there is an incident. I see their views first. Most of the times they speak about the Western world, the way the accident had happened, and they don't speculate about anything. This is what a good thing is. They just talk about the reports, whatever they get. I have challenged them on PK8303 and AirBlue 202 many times. Once Captain Mentor, he replied to me as well. He said, well, he's going to talk about the reports he has. Otherwise, he can't talk about anything else because he's not on the ground. Very nice of him to say like that. But again, you need to know the culture. And about the AirBlue 202 videos, I have also made a playlist, and they are already there. And even in Pakistan, a lot of the people have answered to my queries I've asked about. I've challenged the reports of both the aircrafts, the incidents. Anyhow, let's stick to Air Flight 171. So this Captain Steeve, I've already exposed him in a video, so I don't need to go into, I mean, he started from that maybe flap setting was not right, and Boeing went down. And it blew my mind. I mean, this forces me to ask a question: that has this man ever flown a plane, Boeing, dual engine aircraft, because of wrong flaps goes down? Oof, blew my mind out. It was coined in my Air Force group with the fighter pilots in my course mates. And once they coined this theory in, and I was bamboozled. I said, are you in your right mind? How many times have we crashed because of wrong flaps? And we do commit many mistakes. It happens very often that sometimes instead of flap 20, we put flap 30 or flap 50, or, or 4 flaps down, or sometimes no flaps, and we take off. And this is not according to the schedule. But when we see the thing, we cater, and fighter jets are made to, adjust quickly. Passenger planes are not. But flaps cannot put a dual engine Boeing 737 into the ground. And that got millions of hits. And then he came back with another a few days later about that, oh, I was wrong. How the rat can change the whole thing. And that got 12 million hits for him. And he came up with this rat thingy. By the way, rat is not a rodent in the cockpit. It's a system. But the air turbine, which comes out if the hydraulic or electrical systems fail in an aircraft, it deploys automatically, or it can be deployed manually. In flight PK303, it was deployed, but we don't know manually or not automatically. So that's why I knew about the RAT, which we don't have on the fighter planes. Once the electrical power goes out or engines flamed out, we don't have any alternate. We have to, I mean, the planes I have flown on those 337s, Ks, MFI-17s. And if you talk about FT5s and FT6s, yes, the same thing. These are the copies of MiGs. So this is how we have to land without any alternate system. But passenger planes are equipped with those kind of systems, and they supply them power for, landing gears, lowering down, basic communication, RTs, reception and transmission with the ATC, and basic lights to keep the cockpit visual. It's not pitch dark. So that's what the rat supplies. And that got 12 million hit. So now he changes from flap failure to dual engine failure. And then for dual engine failure, he started up going with another guy, vapor lock theory, and vapor lock. And every day you hear about vapor lock. These are jet engines, turbojet engines. They do not have piston engine capabilities. Yes, I've studied piston engine in my cadetship and worked on that, opened the whole engine up inside out. That's how we were trained, because you need to know about your aircraft fully. And then once we switched to single jet engine, and then the dual jet engine, we were also shown all the things that how we can sustain an inverted flight for how long time and why. So there are many technical things I don't want to go in, but saying that dual engine failure happens on a Boeing, which has so many, the what you call the backup systems installed, the computers, it doesn't allow you to have a dual engine failure. So what happened in this case? And my theory is from that video which I posted on I think 23rd of June, the same day. Sorry, after 10 days of the incident, and I came up with my theory. Let me put it out again. For me, it's like now later on they came up to the Swiss cheesecake theory, where one incident when it happens, it has many other instances. So this is kind of step one by one chain of events happening, and then they end up in a disaster. Swiss cheesecake theory, which I've been telling them, yeah, bros, work on them from day one. But they have to put the Western word Swiss cheesecake theory. So then it becomes authentic for the commentators, especially Captain Steeve types, aviational illiterates, I would call him. So TikToker. Who knows how to get his views? Yeah, his top 8 videos are on the same topic, flight, Air India 171, and after that you see he has hardly, of course, better than mine. Okay, I can't say anything. I have like 10, 20 views on my videos. But if I do the same thing, I wear kind of uniform and put fake things all around, a fake uniform, and then start telling that I have a 50 years experience. Who knows? Who is going to come and check my experience? Period. I could do that too. I probably should do that, because I'm just introducing myself as an ex-aviation cadet. So people, he's a cadet, leave him. I know how this works, this popularity, this populism, but nah. The voice of truth should go, so I don't need to follow those kind of thingies. If you see the takeoff of Flight 171, and you can see a gust of wind on the left engine side, and you see nothing on the right side, Now, if both engines were producing thrust at the takeoff roll, then there should be a gust of wind towards both sides of the runway, because where the engines are located, the runway's width and the engine's distance from each other, there should be two gusts of wind, but there is only one. People have many theories about that too. That was a sudden gust of wind that appeared there. It doesn't happen, or the engine vortex, whatever they say. But no, this was typical jet trash coming out of the left engine only, and the aircraft also drifted towards left after their the dual engine failure. Let's say the fuel cutoff, not the fuel cutoff position. Because fuel switches were found on the on position. So transition from cutoff fuel on to cutoff transition, that has many it could be electrical malfunction as well. There could be many things. So let's not talk about that at the moment. What my theory was since the beginning, and I'm still stuck to it, and was that the ground staff forces the pilots to take even the faulty aircrafts. Minimum equipment list in these countries is really minimum. Like the necessity which they need to get this thing airborne, they would fly. No matter if, for example, if two wings, one of the wing is broken, totally, and yet aerodynamically or aviationally, let's suppose, okay, just supposing, and the aircraft can take off, let's suppose, the engineer would force the pilots to take off. If the pilots don't take off, they would be grounded, they would be suspended until further notice. And we have examples of those pilots who refused. They were suspended from flying for years, and they could not. They could get basic salary only, no TAD, nothing. So you are actually challenging, blackmailing them for the bread and butter, because a pilot has to fly to earn the bread and butter for his family too. But they force you to do that. Why they force you to do that? Because maybe they are not well trained enough to overcome the emergencies right at the spot. So they would do a lot of things to, just not to do their only one job to fix this airplane. This happens in this part of the world because most of the people are into these airlines because of the nepotism. Nepotism is like you have some bureaucrat or some military establishment guy or a politician in your family who has just used his powers and put you in that place for that job, which maybe you did not deserve to do. So we have examples full of these kind of people. So many factors which could, but because you have a powerful person behind you. Not only you, there are many people, even a peon or a janitor in these kind of places is actually enrolled because of a big person, vouching for this one, nepotism. So that's why. So the minimum equipment list, you have to fly. You can't refuse. And we have seen what happened. The recent 737-800 accident, the flight coming in to India, and the fuel switches had a problem. One of the fuel switches, the engine one fuel switch was just coming up and down by itself, going down by itself. I mean, you put a finger on that one, that would go down. But the other one, you have to spring load it, put it out, and then spring load to on position or spring load to off position. But this switch did that. And that could happen. As I said, that a stitch in time saves 9, but in our world, it doesn't happen. So flights 171, now the pilots are dead. We don't know what actually could have happened to them. But this incident tells us, because once the pilot reported, the aircraft came into India, and engineers said, there's no problem with the aircraft. And we have the video of the incident. It's not an AI-generated video. It is by the pilot, and he has confirmed that this fuel switch was faulty. Now, there was a question raised why it is the Air India that is the faulty switches. Well, it could be Air India, it could be Air Pakistan, it could be Air China, it could be Air Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Because in this part of the world, these things are common and people fly. We had our flight 606, PK 606, in which Junaid Jamshed, he died, our famous pop singer who later turned into an Islamic kind of person. And the engines were faulty, but the pilots were, this ATR can land with one engine, so you take it. And that's what happened. They took it for many times, but this time it ended up in a disaster. No actions were taken against the engineers who made this faulty aircraft flyable, but nothing happened to them. So this is what happens in this part of the world. So again, stick to my theory is that the aircraft's right engine was not fully functioning. And I gave the reasons for that. It was not a brand new engine. It was replaced from another aircraft. So this is what has happened. So once people say that, oh, it just changed, replaced the engine. No, it was replaced from another aircraft because this is what happens. The minimum equipment list in India, Pakistan, this is very common practice. For example, if the door of my aircraft is not working, but you can still close it down, I would report that it didn't close down normally. We had to do some extra efforts. So please put a fix on that one. So there are three levels. Number one is instant, like those things that need instant care. Then there's one for 3 days and one for 10 days. So like door opening, closing is for 10 days. So what they would do that on day 10 or whenever they can replace a door, whatever time that takes, like if it takes 2 days, on day 8, they would replace that door with another functional aircraft. They would take the door off from that plane and put it on this plane. Now, what happens? This airplane is fit to fly. That airplane never recorded any mistakes. So once that pilot would fly with that faulty door, he's going to come back and make the report. And again, 8 days, 10 days would pass, and the engineers would just replace the door. They would not fix the problem. They would just replace it. And even in softwares, they just reset the software, and then the previous things are erased. Cache memory is gone, and then the computer works on the new things. So we call them jugards, just shortcuts. So, in my opinion, because the gust is available on the left side of the runway, and what happens if your left engine is working, then the non-functional engine or had less than 50% of power engine that won't be working as good as this one. So the difference between these two, their thrust difference, would let the aircraft fly or drag towards the faulty engine. So that's why pilots would prefer to take off from the left side of the runway. In this case, that is clearly being seen. The aircraft was aligned on the left side of the runway, and it took off, and the gust of the wind is seen on the left side, not on the right side, because the engine thrust did not hit the right side thingy. The right side of the runway's threshold where the grass or the other stuff is available. So the aircraft had a faulty engine, went up into the air. As soon as it got up into the air, now here, because the RAT was deployed, we don't know the timings because the CCTV camera timing is different from the corporate voice recorder timing, from the FDR, flight data recorder recording. They can't be the same. They have their own time, but clock ticks the same. So this is a now huge. Where now these aviational illiterates are talking about the RAD deployment and when was it deployed. Definitely was deployed when one of the engine was not working properly. So probably at the time of takeoff. Now the takeoff roll, we still don't know how long did the aircraft take, but definitely it got well off the ground. because it's a very long runway. So it had a few hundred feet in front of it once it took off. So, and then it drifted towards left. And even till the end, it was drifting towards left side. And the crash side is on towards the left side, not on the right side. So what does this tell? Whatever the transition of fuel switches to cutoff position happened. Now, my theory was that because once you take off, you need even a little bit of power from this engine. That's going to help you. Although Boeing can take off with one engine totally shut off, and one engine can perform the takeoff with that 195 tons of weight. It is easily done on one engine, but something is better than nothing. So the pilots kept both the engines on, even one was faulty. So once they got into the air, now here, this was a catch that I thought that once they wanted to cut off engine number 2, because now they don't need it, they're already taken off. Probably by mistake, they cut off engine number 2, like in Korean Jeju airliners. It is still reported, but I'm not going to talk about that at the moment. For that, I have my videos too. So this was my initial because there was no initial report where they say that both fuel transition switches within 1 second transition from switch off to switch on to switch off position. So now once you say that, like in this video, Captain Steeve said, or maybe, probably, they would have heard it. They are flying with one faulty engine, okay? So they would not hear that sound of like, boom, the engine's flaming out. No, because they know the condition of the aircraft. They had to take off with those faulty conditions. So they did take off. Now, whatever has happened during these 2 or 3 seconds, we don't know. Well, we're not speculating on that one. But the fact is that the switches, the fuel supply to the engines was cut off, and the computer could not back up, just restart, because time was too less. Above ground level, they were at 303 feet, 100 meters above the ground level. So Boeing manual says very clearly the glide ratio in case of dirty configuration, which is flaps down, gears down, and we saw the flaps were down till the end. Once we saw that wing on the ground, the flaps were down, gears were down, of course. We saw the video very clearly. This is called the dirty configuration or the clean configuration. The glide ratio of this aircraft with both the engines not getting power is 3.5. That means for every 1 foot in the air, it would glide ahead 3.5 feet. They were at 100 feet, they would have glided 350 feet and crashed. But where did they crash? About 1,700 feet away from, 1,700 meters, 1.7 kilometers away from the takeoff point. What does that tell you? That this plane was gliding at the ratio of 17.5 to 1. Like for every 1 meter of height, it was flying 17.5 meters ahead. Means there was a bit of power left somewhere. Now, they explain me, these aviation illiterates, where did this power come from? And that fits my theory. One of the engine was functional. Probably one of the engine was cut off, but as soon as they realized it was the wrong engine, I'm not saying that who did it, or it had to automatically happen, because if there's a problem and the computer senses that problem, it's going to cut off the engines by itself, because we have seen that in the Japanese airline back in times, which landed and both the engines were shut down by the computer by itself, and they had to tow the airplane away. So the aircraft's computer system, FedEx, probably would have done that one. So fuel switches both to cut off position now. Then the pilots realized, we're going to get in thrust. And they had only 10 seconds to react to that one. Definitely there will be 2 click sounds if they really show or make us know the cockpit voice recorder sounds, that the toggle switches of the fuel system because they were at on position. So they must have put them to off first and then back to on again. Because if they're already on position, they would not have realized. But even these aviational illiterate, Mr. Captain Steeve, is that, oh, there was no way they would have been waiting for 9 seconds if they have done it accidentally. Well, you are saying that the person was committing suicide. So a suicidal person would not turn those fuel switches back to on again. Clear. We have seen in the German Iran and the Indonesian missing airplane, Malaysian, I think. If a pilot is suicidal, within 9 seconds he would change his mind. Oh, no, I want to live. I don't want to go to God. I want to live peacefully on this planet Earth. If he has put those switches down, trust me, he would not put them back again to turn on position again. But clearly here, the switches were transitioned from cut off to cut on position again. Now, was it done by Boeing's FedEx system or by the pilots? We don't know. The report doesn't tell us, but common sense is not so common. So the pilots were trying to save the aircraft, both of them. You can't, there's no way you can challenge their integrity, their honesty, their loyalty towards saving this plane. This is what I want to say. So hopefully the outer result comes out very soon, and I hope this is February. So by the time of June, still 4 months, there will be another report coming out. The first report is totally rejected, full of blunders, full of mistakes, even spelling mistakes. But again, this is made to, convince the Western civilized nations, Boeing, for example, Airbus, that, oh, we did our job, and the report is in perfect English, the spelling mistakes. But no, it's not up to the you do not put these things that, why did you cut off the engines? Oh, I did not do so. Why would you put, because you want to make the perception. The other day, that guy was saying, that there were 2 flights, 3 actually, and you see, that was the rudder problem when they got stuck and the aircraft went into the ground before landing. For 9 years, they blamed the pilots. And this MCAS, Boeing 70 MAX, the problem happened with that one. For 2 incidents, the pilots were blamed. After that, they cleared, but it was done already. People were convinced. They don't need to see what happened later on. The first impression is the last impression. So I'm happy that even on local level of Indian community, there are many voices coming up saying, this time you're not going to go away with this one. And I totally support those people. Once we have all the facts in front of us, at the end of the day, trust me, I always say, my famous line is that a pilot crashes, eventually at the end of the day, it's because of his miscalculations. See, it's the pilot's job to land the aircraft safely. See, I'm being honest. But what circumstances are given to him that lead him to miscalculate? And then the crash happens. We need to work on those ones too. So that's all for today. See you next time. Allah.